So thank you very much for that warm introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here speaking and having the opportunity to speak with a group of corporate stakeholders. I've spent a lot of time the last few months working with government and universities for obvious reasons, or as will become apparent. And we're at the start of what I think is a really exciting journey at this point, and one that may not have been on offer when most of you were graduating from university, I believe. So in the context of your themes today, I think this is a really interesting opportunity to look at the customer, in our case, the collaboration between the universities and diversity in the forms of the disciplines that we will encompass, but also the geographical diversity across the state. And what we're looking forward to doing is to working with the next generation of New South Wales entrepreneurs. The context is that for over 15 years now, Sweden and in particular Stockholm have been running an amazing experiment, or as the cornerstone financier there would put it, have created a very strange beast. And that beast initially was a collaboration between three leading universities, University of Technology, Medicine and the leading business school. In time it evolved to include the design school and the more generalist university. And by 2009 all five players were involved. And this was a common academic platform, a not-for-profit, that was financed externally and was actually, in this case, a net financier of all five universities to a small degree, that offered a unique opportunity to bring students together across those disciplines, both in credit granting and co-curricular activities. Now, what makes our wonderful new initiative in New South Wales, I think, well, number one, unprecedented, is that this is a collaboration between every university in the state of New South Wales and TAFE New South Wales. That said, it obviously sets us up in a very specific geography when it comes to having some 200 touch points across the state, physical touch points, if we look at the campuses of all those entities. And it means from day one we're born statewide. We're Sydney in name only. So we're the New South Wales School of Entrepreneurship effectively, and we're working from a physical HQ hub in Ultimo, but we're working back and forth across the state with all our members. So establishment of operations. The backstory again to this is that I was lucky enough to give a seminar for Mary O'Kane, the Chief Scientist and Engineer in New South Wales here in February last year, and obviously there's been a really interesting movement afoot within the state to try new endeavours in this space. The Stockholm model was seen as an opportunity to leverage some experiences there and some wins to try something new, and at that point that's where the Vice-Chancellors from all those universities and the MD of TAFE jumped on board with government, who have cornerstone funded the initiative to the tune of $25 million. So what have we done? We've committed to establishing this entity. So as a state that was done, funding was put in place, recruitment of a terrific steering committee from amongst those university stakeholders. We've identified a strategic location. So as I mentioned, that's in Ultimo. It happens to be on the TAFE campus opposite UTS there. Founding board is now in place. For those familiar with the university system, we have a wonderful leading chair in the person of Mark Wainwright, so a former Vice-Chancellor of the University of New South Wales, and a terrific board supporting us, and many other people giving their time in a fashion of different ways to help us get started at this stage. We've been beginning to work across the communities, and we will commence operations and have a functioning building for the second half of the year. So New South Wales, the hotbed of Australian innovation, may be a little more controversial given the makeup of this room. This is a New South Wales initiative. It obviously encompasses those member institutions with state funding. That said, I think on a broader footing, we're really looking forward to push this frontier forward in an Australian and a global context. New South Wales, 6% of small companies accounting for net jobs growth in recent years, 60% of startup activity in New South Wales. New numbers from Startup Muster recently around that. 4 jobs per startup on average, 109 billion in value to the economy by 2033. I don't think there's a lot of dispute that this is a really impactful and important space to be working in. And something that I think probably on all of your minds is how do we work with universities and what role do these young students play in our, we just heard about an amazing business playing right at the other end of that spectrum. And so part of our job is to form that platform to get students thinking about innovation in different contexts and maybe meeting you much earlier than they might otherwise. Now that said, corporate partners are very important, well-established partners. Entrepreneurial thinking is a key element of what we're looking to develop. But likewise are startups themselves. So a learning from Stockholm was that bachelor's and master's students surprisingly can actually create value-creating startups, often because they know no better. The assumption there many years ago was without a Rolodex and without work experience, how on earth could they do just that? But they've proven it's very wrong. Now that's a journey that we're undertaking as well. We're a startup. I was, while my seminar February last year turned out to have inspired this initiative, little did I know at the time that I would be the sucker standing in front of you today. So it was one of those wonderful situations where things moved forward, and I was delighted from Stockholm to be able to say to my board, look at New South Wales, they've bought into what we've done, as several others have around the world. What we are, of course, doing is bringing the learnings to bear in creating something from scratch. So, the bottom line is every Vice-Chancellor I have as my 12 members has a larger personal staff than I will ever have in totality. And that's quite deliberate. We're bootstrapped, we're small, we're nimble. So this is our building, our little HQ, 2 floors of 400 square metres currently, with a 3rd floor that we'll pick up in a couple of years' time, and that'll be the whole building. We've kept it really simple, as we believe we should in the startup space. We've created a blank canvas, so we've reclaimed that flooring, and we'll do basically a big joinery project that will enable seminars, activities like this, inspirational events of different sizes and natures in that physical space. So I hope we'll see many of you there over time. This is where we are, and we're about to do the final stage of the build completion mid-year. Will be something a little more like that. So there'll be town hall seating, there'll be banketry under the windows. It will remain quite a porous environment, quite different from this wonderful room where the acoustics are perfect and we're all focused. Semester 2, we will see our first courses and activities. That said, 2 weeks ago, we ran in partnership with UTS at their business school there, Future of Education 2.0, with Tim Dodds from the AFR, amongst others, and myself on a panel. I think we had 100, the modern world, we had 150 people in a nice full room at University of Sydney, 30,000 people watching it live on Facebook. So what's he really mean? What actually happens? If we go back to the Stockholm model, these are just some concrete numbers to give you a sense of this. This is a small but very high common stage. It's for the rising stars. It's not all entrepreneurship in these contexts. It is for a group that are selected, that come together in an applied and interdisciplinary setting. In Stockholm, capped at 1,000 students a year through the academic courses. Quite deliberately, there are several thousand more who apply. We want a high quality interaction for them. The academic programs are complemented by many what we call co-curricular. 60 schools globally, Stockholm works with on an annual basis, 200 plus guest lecturers, people like yourselves, people from the startup community, international academics or government representatives. So keeping it very close to industry. And over there, 13,000 graduates to date through the academic program. So why does any of this matter? Why have we embarked upon this in New South Wales? I think a lot of you, an increased opportunity to interact with universities may resonate for. It's certainly something I think universities are very interested in learning about and pursuing in a host of different fashions. This is just one such fashion. What did we see come out the other end in Stockholm? And this is where it got interesting. It was the creation of a community, essentially. So over time, yes, Stockholm's a wonderful, strong little startup hub compared to Sydney, but per capita, second most unicorns in the world outside Silicon Valley. 19% of our alum sitting on corporate boards, a third of them actually running companies. 3, I think it's more than 3 now, 5 over 500 million valuations. A lot of them are European focused, so we've got the Square equivalent in Europe, iZettle, worth more than $500 million today. For those who might have come across it, Klarna is is certainly our biggest financial success at the moment. So in Stockholm, next to Spotify, that's valued at $2.5–3 billion currently. So that's what we've seen come out of Stockholm. And really, at the end of the day, it's this community that you can see there. That's one of the events. We used to run the largest startup event in Scandinavia, not because we're in that business, because nobody else was doing it until 5 years ago when Slush came along and when when our friends from Ireland started Web 2.0 and other, really large global events. It's a homecoming type atmosphere. Last one I was at, we had 50 financiers in the room, not again because it's a financing event, but just because it's a really interesting group of alumni and students that come back together and that want to be part of that community. Started off with wonderful corporate people like yourselves coming back as alums and mentoring or guest lecturing students in a variety of contexts. We then began to see our own alums come back 2-3 years out, so students could see that next step of their own career development rather than the gentleman managing billions in assets and that sort of staged element. Then our alumni started recruiting our students, started investing in our students, introducing them to their VCs and so on. So we're delighted to work with so many partners. Guessing not many of you have been here, New Engineering School in Bathurst. There are so many fantastic initiatives and facilities around the state of New South Wales. We're just really looking forward to connecting them and connecting people as best we can from our positioning. And I'll finish here. And really, like many of these businesses, as I said at the start, we don't own or directly retain our academic talent, nor our talent when it comes to other training and mentoring. Some of it is begged or borrowed. A small part of it will be resourced through our business model with the member universities. We don't give our students academic credits. They're given through their home institutions. We only accept students directly from the 12 members. Of course, they come out with a certification from us, but that's only worth as much as our brand name. And yet we think that's the model where a small central hub supported by a wonderful group of people, organisation, corporate partners in the startup community can quite possibly have an amazing impact over time. And I welcome you all in any fashion you might like to be to please reach out to me in time if you'd like to explore this further, learn more, would like to be a part of it with young people just trying to break the mold a little and do something different. Thank you for having me.